Yeah, I got a lot of concerns. I'm just surprised.
What's your concern, though?
Well, I'm surprised that the Senate has decided to completely depart from the House framework when it comes to Medicaid and the provider taxes. I'm also surprised that they decided to extend the Green New Deal tax subsidies. They decided to weaken and roll back a bunch of the president's tax cuts, the populist tax cuts. And then on the rural hospitals, I mean, this is not at all. I've talked to our leadership constantly about this, and I was told we've got a fix on the provider tax issue. We're going to help rural hospitals. There's nothing in here for rural hospitals. In fact, what they're doing is lowering the provider tax to make it even worse. So it's like we're defunding rural hospitals in order to pay for extension to the Green New Deal. Like I don't get it at all.
So there's no way you could support something like this?
It needs a lot of work on it. I'll just say it needs work.
Do you think you're going to talk to anyone on finance to kind of help them understand like your perspective on the provider tax?
Being very vocal about my concerns. Yeah.
But what is the impact on rural hospitals if this were to become law?
Well, what they tell me is that we'd be looking at closures. I mean, listen, half of the hospitals in my state are rural. So I mean, that's a huge number. We've already lost a bunch of rural hospitals. And what leadership told me over and over is we're working on a fix for rural hospitals. I don't see anything in there to that effect. Nothing. It's very different than what the House negotiated with the president. It's different from what the president negotiated. I can't figure out why in the world we would so radically depart from the president's own framework. It's bizarre to me.
Are there any other?
You said yesterday that you would like to hear what President Trump has to say about this. Are you planning to speak with him about
I'm sure I will. Yeah, I'm sure I will.
anytime soon?
Well, I'm sure I will. I'll let you know.
Are there any other senators who feel kind of the same way, that they feel very surprised about what they saw in the bill?
Yes. I don't want to speak. Well, I'm not going to speak for them, but I'll just say that I've had a number of conversations since yesterday evening with people who were really shocked.
We often hear that benefits would not be cut, Medicaid benefits would not be cut. Do you think that this amounts to a benefit cut?
Well, I don't think it's a benefit cut, Mono, but if you can't go to the hospital, I mean, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good, right? I mean, listen, I'm from a rural area. I grew up in a town of 4,000 people. My little town was the county seat, so the hospital was there. I often joke that I was, a frequent contributor to that hospital's business. I was there a lot as a kid with all kinds of injuries. But in all seriousness, like if you close hospitals in my town, 4,000 people, that's a lot of jobs. That's a killer for that town. And then the nearest hospital is like 40 miles away. I mean, we can't do that. So we've got to keep rural hospitals up. Why would we defund rural hospitals to pay for Chinese solar panels? Like, I just don't get it. I can't tell you how surprised I am by this and completely baffled by it. This is not at all what we were told would be in this bill.
Can this be done by July 4th?
I don't know. I hope the Senate leadership is sharpening their pencils and ready to work all night, because this needs a lot of work.
As it stands today, are you currently a no, unless you see the text change?
Let me just say it needs a lot of work. Now the bright spot is RECA, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. That will expand healthcare access for hundreds of thousands of people around the country, beginning in the state of Missouri. This will be a generational achievement for Missouri if we're able to get this bill passed. It's in the bill, so I'm delighted about that. But we got to have hospitals open that people can go to.
I know you've been an advocate of expanding RECA for a while. Are you calculating that in your decision? Would you support it at all because of?
I can't imagine supporting the bill without RECA. Let's put it that way. So I'm glad that it's in there. It's a hugely significant moment for survivors of nuclear radiation, not just in Missouri, but really across the country: Tennessee, Alaska, Kentucky, Utah, Wyoming, Texas, New Mexico, Idaho. I can go down the list. I mean, there's a lot of people who are affected by this, and this will significantly expand access to health care for these folks. So that's great. That's a big, big win. But we got to have hospitals open, rural hospitals open, so people can go get care in all of those states I just mentioned, beginning with my own.
Can you give a message to Fayette, Missouri?
Iran conflict. You can weigh in at all.
Well, listen, I mean, I just think that I trust the president on this. I think the president's been really clear. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. I mean, Iran ought to have taken the off-ramp that the president's offered them, and I understand is still offering them. So, if they don't do that, I mean, they're not going to get a nuclear weapon. That's the bottom line here. It's just not going to happen. So they ought to embrace that reality, and they can either peacefully give up their nuclear program, or it looks to me like it's going to be bombed to smithereens. So it's one or the other.
Senator Kane's War Powers resolution?
Is it on this, on Iran?
Yes, Senator Kane's War Powers resolution saying that the president can't make any offensive strikes against Iran.
No, but what? very little danger that this president, remember, the Democrats and many Republican hawks have criticized this president over and over for being too slow to embrace foreign conflict. So I'm not worried about that with Donald Trump. But I do think that he's pretty firm.
So I remember.
Today, are lawmakers concerned more about the security following in the wake of this Minnesota shooting? Do you think more security needs to be allocated to lawmakers?
I was not at the briefing this morning, so I can't speak to that. I'm sure people are concerned.
Senator Blumenthal blamed what he calls MAGA rhetoric for intensifying the violence, political violence we're seeing in this country. What do you say to that kind of criticism?
Well, listen, I'd just be real careful about the President of the United States has been shot at twice in the last year, egged on by the most unbelievable rhetoric, calling him a fascist, calling him a threat to democracy, calling for him to be taken out. So I think we could work together to turn down the temperature here. I mean, you look at what's happened just in the LA riots, and you look at this violence that's been going on, and you look at what my Democrat colleagues have been saying about that. I mean, calling the president a dictator. I mean, that's the stuff that got him shot. Now you've got nuts shooting other people. I mean, I think we can all, listen, you don't have to agree with your political opponents. You can criticize them strongly. Nobody is tougher in hearings than I am. That's all fine, but I think we need to get out of the business of calling our political opponents fascists and anarchists and terrible people. It's like, listen, we can disagree with each other without implying that the other person ought to have violence inflicted on them. So I think we got to get to that
Senator,
point.
do you feel safe? And also,
Yeah.
do you think that members of Congress should have 24/7 security? Is that even
Oh my gosh,
possible?
I don't know the answer to that. I defer to the experts. We've got some great cops all around who work hard to keep members safe. I mean, listen. I don't pay attention to that stuff. I just don't. I just do my job. But I defer to Capitol Hill Police and law enforcement, FBI. Those guys, they know what they're doing.
Senator, on the Biden cover-up hearing tomorrow,
Yeah.
what do you hope to learn that
Who's
you
in
already haven't
charge?
learned already?
Well, who's running the auto pen? I mean, really, who was running that thing? We need to know. And if it wasn't the president, so are the pardons that he signed, for instance, or the clemencies for drug dealers, murderers, are those legitimate? I don't know. I mean, this is uncharted territory. We've never seen anything like this before. But we need to get some answers to who is actually running the country, because it sure as heck wasn't Joe Biden. All right, thank you guys.
What would you say to people in Fayette, Missouri?